Welcome to the Earth Resources Observation and Science Center, EROS. My name is Dr. Frank Kelly. I'm the director here at EROS. The panel would like to provide a few comments today in this press conference, and we will open the floor to questions here in just a moment. But first, let me introduce who we have here on the panel. To my extreme left, and then I'll come back toward myself. We have the Honorable Senator Tim Johnson, Senior Senator from South Dakota. We have Dr. Mike Freilich. He's the Director of the Earth Science Division at NASA headquarters. Dr. Suzette Kimball. She is the Acting Director of the U.S. Geological Survey. Dr. Matt Larson. He is Associate Director at USGS for Climate and Land Use Change. And to my immediate left is Dr. Colleen Hartman. She is the Deputy Director for Science, Operations, and Program Performance at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. The Landsat program is a joint initiative between the USGS and NASA. LDCM is the 8th satellite in the Landsat series. Since the launch of Landsat 1 in 1972, information from Landsat satellites has become an integral part of the operational management activities around the world. This remarkable series of satellites provides key land change monitoring and prediction information to resource managers and decision makers about the Earth's landscape and its resources. This is a great day for Landsat, for the USGS, for NASA, as we take the last step in the effort of many years, bringing us to full operation of Landsat 8 and the distribution of data from that system. It's the most advanced and the most capable of the Landsat series of satellites. NASA, less than an hour ago, has formally transferred the Landsat Data Continuity Mission to the USGS EROS Center for operational execution. We actually got the keys. It is now named Landsat 8. Dr. Kimball, Dr. Freilich, and I authorized the release of Landsat 8 data to the world. And we know that people have already called to wonder where that data is. And it is out there, and it's starting to be accessed. This is a proud moment for NASA, for the USGS, for South Dakota, and for the EROS Center. We have a 40-year legacy of service here at EROS. Service locally, service nationally, and service to the world. We now have over 20,000 Landsat 8 scenes that have already been collected dating back to April 12th, and they are now available to the world at no cost. Now let me ask the rest of the panel if they'd like to say a few words. I'll start with Senator Johnson. Senator?
It's great to be here celebrating 2 milestones for EROS, thanks to the hard work of many dedicated individuals at both NASA and USDA. Today we will witness the transition of the Landsat 8 satellite to USGS. Data from the satellite will be collected, archived, and disseminated from EROS. From my seat on the Senate Appropriations Committee, I fought for funding for Landsat mission for many years, and I'm pleased that Landsat 8 is poised to ensure this important project continues for years to come. Having a world-class scientific facility like EROS in South Dakota has helped inspire many young people to pursue careers in science and brought hundreds of good jobs to our state. I look forward to continuing the close work relationship I have always maintained with EROS, and once again congratulate Dr. Kelly, Dr. Freilich, Dr. Kimball, Dr. Hartman, and everyone else who has worked to make this day possible. Thank you.
Dr. Freilich.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. A pleasure on NASA's part, pleasure to be an American here today. In February, we launched what was then known as the Landsat Data Continuity Mission. The satellite and the ground processing system and operations from USGS have operated nearly flawlessly since then, and as you heard from Dr. Kelly, unprecedented world-class measurements have been returned and are now being made available to the science community and to decision makers across the nation and across the world. The 40-year time series from Landsat, 40-plus year time series from the Landsat system, and the free and open availability of data, thanks to the courageous organizational decisions of USGS, stand as profound testaments to our nation's technological ability and also our nation's contributions to bettering the lives of our citizens and all of humanity, indeed. NASA is extremely proud to be part of the Landsat team, and we're very, very pleased to be here for this milestone event.
Thank you, yes, and I can certainly echo the comments made thus far. In February, I had the opportunity to view my first live launch, and that was for LDCM, now known as Landsat 8, as of 40 minutes ago. And it was a truly inspirational and aspirational moment. And I say aspirational because we're now entering our 5th decade of continuous Earth observations that have uses that go far beyond a pure scientific evaluation, but touch the lives of decision makers, the lives of the public nationally and around the world. This could not have happened without the partnership that we have with NASA and with the private sector that helped both design and manufacture the high-level technology that we have now on Landsat 8. So with today, we are entering the next half century of Earth observations, and it is, in fact, a very proud day for all of us, and it should be a proud day for the nation. This will help us make firm and well-informed decisions about how we manage our land resources, how we address water resource issues, how we address our agricultural needs across the nation. So with that, my thanks to colleagues at NASA, my thanks to colleagues in the private sector who have made this day possible.
Thanks, Suzette. Another reason for us to celebrate is, as Frank noted, these data are free to everyone in the United States and everyone in the world. In fact, at this point, about 186 countries, which is just about everyone, has accessed Landsat data at some point and are likely to continue to do so since our free and open policy began at the end of 2008. This is a great statement by the U.S. government, by our democratic nation. The democratization of data, or data democracy is another way to refer to it. These data are used all over the world for planning purposes, for assessing natural resources, and they ground truth information that otherwise might not be easily accounted for. For example, how much forest are we losing in the Pacific Northwest, or how much forest are we losing in the Amazon? These data are now open and available to anyone to access through the Landsat archive and through the new data stream coming from Landsat 8. So this is a proud day. I don't know if you felt it, a little flutter at 1 o'clock now, 40 minutes ago. The lights might have dimmed a little bit as all of a sudden that information started flowing out to the world. So we're very excited here.
Thanks, Matt. You can take a look at the Landsat data now, coming from Landsat 8, but you can also look at the other data. And one thing you'll find is it's strikingly beautiful. But the Landsat data isn't just a pretty picture. These are really picture elements, and the elements in those pixels are actually well-calibrated scientific data that are wavelength specific, that carry physical parameters. And it's that very data that allows us to assess both the temporary dimming of lights, like fires or volcanoes, and long-term climate change. That's why this 4 decades long data set is so critical to continue into the future. I think it's a national treasure and one we must continue on with. I want to end my opening by thanking the Department of Interior and USGS. I think the collaboration between NASA and DOI USGS has just been exemplary, along with our industry partners. It shows the best of what we can do together with aerospace industry for the country. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Colleen. So we will now open the floor to any questions here in the room, and then we'll go to the phone after that. Anybody? Yes, in the back.
When we say...
Could you identify yourself and...
Harry Groton with Kello TV.
Well,
When EROS says we have the keys, what does that mean exactly? How do you drive the Landsat?
Can you borrow the keys? Is that what you're really asking?
Let's just say the keys are in the ignition, okay, but we can't get there to turn it off. It's been on since it was launched in February 11th and on orbit. When we talk about getting the keys, that means that Landsat 8 is going to be imaging and delivering to EROS here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, about over 400 images per day. And that data will come into our facility. It will be processed to that scientific quality of information and then provided to the world. We will manage the information that goes to the satellite to make sure that it operates correctly. And we will do that from mission operations centers, which actually will reside out in Maryland at the Goddard Space Flight Center. So it's a combined effort.
So you can kind of steer it from here then, remotely control it in some ways from here?
The controlling basically comes from the mission operations center, which is out in Maryland. But that organization is part of EROS. And so from a leadership perspective, I've got my hand on the throttle.
thanks, Frank. Other questions here in the room? Yes, sir.
Dirk Lammers, AP, and I know this has been a continuous operation, having Landsats in the air. For whoever wants to answer it, what's next, and what are you looking at for capabilities in the next generation satellite?
That might be a joint answer. I'll talk about the sort of what's next in the broader terms. The 2014 budget issued by the President makes a very clear statement that the administration, that the White House fully supports an ongoing sustained Landsat program. And they've directed NASA and USGS to work together on some of the technical details and how that this next mission exactly will look. And but the language is clear that we have been asked and directed to move forward on the development of a continual Landsat effort over the next 2 decades. In terms of technical capabilities, I don't know if Mike or Colleen want to comment on what types of things might be considered in the next mission.
Yes, let me just expand on Matt's answer. The administration is committed to a sustained and sustainable global land imaging program for the nation that will have global measurements. We will draw on the ideas and the approaches that the NASA and USGS team, singular, working together, have developed that have given us the past 40 years, as well as other ideas from academia, from the private sector that may be out there as we engineer over the next several months the plan for this sustainable, multi-decadal program. We've tried as a nation several times with modest success to engineer such a program. We've delivered for the nation and for the world the 40-year continuous time series. We will now have a better engineered program. It will have at least the capabilities that Landsat 7 and now Landsat 8 are providing to the science and the operational communities.
Thanks, Mike.
I might add, for the last 40 years, the Goddard Space Flight Center for NASA has been proud to be having delivered the Landsat series for that 40 years. And we're certainly looking forward to participating in this study going forward for the next decade of Landsat satellite data. It's an exciting time, making sure we have that continuous record that is backward compatible to the data we have now is one of the most essential scientific endeavors we've got going, in my opinion.
And to conclude with that question, one of the things that's occurred over the last decade or two, particularly with the conversion to free data, is that more and more government and private sector activities are completely dependent on Landsat. So, for example, USDA uses Landsat data to verify crop insurance fraud. Forest Service uses it to track wildfire and conditions after burns and so forth. So the degree to which Landsat data has penetrated into multiple functions of government at local and federal scales is remarkable, and many more entities are now dependent on Landsat than they were even 10 years ago. Other questions here in the room? Anybody? Yes.
Nick Lauer with the Argus Leader. How much demand is there for the data that you guys collect and distribute?
I'll compare to when the data were, when we charged for the data before 08, we saw sort of a maximum annual rate of downloads of 20,000 images per year. As soon as we made the open and free data policy, that number rapidly accelerated to now about 3 million images per year are downloaded. We expect that as of 50 minutes ago, that rate will increase because of the high quality of the Landsat 8 data. So it's tough to know exactly what that future demand will be. One great example that you might have seen the last 2 weeks was when Google released a new product in which anybody without much technical expertise can go to any place on the planet and look at a time series or a continual series of images. So, for example, you could go to the Amazon basin and look at forest cover in a particular sector over the last 3 or 4 decades. We expect activities like that to spawn a lot more interest and use of the data, and the demand should rise accordingly. Anyone else want to comment on that? Other questions here in the room?
Is NASA's role essentially done with Landsat 8 then? Is that what this means today?
Yes and no. Colleen, maybe. we got the keys, but they still have their eye on them. You know the first time you let your teenager drive?
Yeah, there you go. And actually that analogy isn't quite right. Department of Interior and USGS is responsible, but as the builder and flyer of the Landsat 8 up until now, we will still be in the background providing support. We have some of the hardware in case there's troubleshooting, but instead of being in the prime role, we're in the support role.
And I might also point out that NASA co-chairs with USGS the science team, and NASA investigators in a whole wide variety of Earth system science studies utilize the time series that the Landsat satellites have provided. So the two agencies remain inextricably linked.
Yes.
Paul Mooney, Into Network. Are there plans already for Landsat 9?
Well, there's probably several of us can answer that question, but we've spent the last 12 to 18 months working with NASA and other interests to get some initial user requirements. In other words, what are the basic needs of the user community, and quantify those. Wound up with something on the order of about 30 different requirements, I forget the exact number, for what the next Landsat mission ought to look like in terms of frequency of data collection, types of bands, technical aspects such as that, and all the different applications that are being sought by different users. I mentioned examples earlier. Not sure if Colleen or maybe even someone from our Landsat science team here, Jim Irons or Tom Loveland, want to comment further. Anyone? Suzette?
I'll say a couple of words on this particular topic. I think it's important to note that this, getting to the point where we are with Landsat 8 has been a true partnership that's involved both the administration, Congress, and the private sector. It is not something that any one of us has done alone. And each of those entities has not only asked us, to the administration and Congress, has asked NASA and USGS to work closely together to begin planning so that we have a continuous program of Landsat satellites, not just a series of one satellite at a time. And that transition from being single satellite focused to a programmatic focus is a very, very important distinction, and it's going to be very important for us in the future. So we have all responded affirmatively to this challenge to begin working now for Landsat 9, and to also begin thinking about what it takes, as Dr. Freilich mentioned, to continue this into the decades in the future, so beyond a Landsat 9. I can tell you that the Department of Interior is absolutely committed to this endeavor, and we will be putting the resources, both brain power and other resources behind it to make sure that it happens.
Thanks. Other questions here in the room? I'm going to go to the phone for a moment. Anyone on the phone with a question, please identify yourself.
This is Dan Leone with Space News. I want to get a little clarity here. So the EROS facility in South Dakota, satellites aren't actually controlled from there. They're controlled at Goddard in Maryland, but it's still a USGS function. So is USGS actually, the metaphor, driving it, but just not out of South Dakota?
I think you have it right. The Mission Operations Center, where the actual commanding of the satellite on a day-to-day basis, that occurs out in Maryland. That organization is part of EROS here in Sioux Falls. So the physical activity is out there, but planning, science planning, working with how we execute that is all done here at EROS and with our partners that we have on the science team with NASA, as well as other partners we have with industry. But you're correct. It is operated from Maryland, but it is part of the EROS organization.
All right, so then the next question, at EROS, the ground capabilities there have gotten more robust. I understood it started as a single mainframe in the 70s. So now, of all this capacity that you have there to intercept and process the data on the ground and send it out to the end users, I mean, how much more could you scale that up? Like, for example, could you be, when Landsat 9, 10, and whichever starts flying, is there enough spare capacity there to handle all of those satellites? Or at what point do you have to expand again? How much can you control out of Sioux Falls?
Well, in terms of what we do here in Sioux Falls, we have more than one mainframe now. But we bring in data from not just Landsat 8 now, but also from Landsat 7. That also comes in through a series of partners as well as directly here at EROS, and we have the capacity to handle all of that input and then the demand that we've had to this point, probably several times over in terms of what we've seen as demand. And we're pretty sure that Landsat 8 will be something that will stress us but not break us. As we look forward with other missions, we will have to look at what the requirements are from our science team and our science advisors, understand what needs to be sensed from space to meet the mission of that science activity. And through that, we will continue to develop a ground system here that will meet that demand and continue to provide that data free of charge to the world.
So, okay, I got two more quick ones here then. So are Landsat 7 and Landsat 8 the only satellites from which you're processing data now?
That's correct. Landsat 5 came to its end just a matter of in the last few months. It's now in the Guinness Book for being the longest lasting Earth observing satellite ever. Landsat 7 continues to transmit data, and now we have Landsat 8, which means we have 8-day repeat images of everywhere and on the Earth's surface, on the terrestrial Earth's surface.
All right, finally, since NASA and USGS are both in the room together finally, when do you all expect to have a team together to start, to formally start the nuts and bolts work of looking at whatever the next gen Earth imaging system is going to be? You know, how big the team is yet, who's on it, when they're having their first meeting, all of this kind of stuff. What's the progress on Landsat successors?
Yes, Dan, this is Mike. As you know, we have already had a series of discussions at the sort of stratospheric management levels, as well as all the way down to working levels, people who actually know what they're talking about, in a steering committee. NASA and USGS have identified members for the steering committee. They have already begun discussions. Those discussions will increase, obviously, in magnitude and intensity over the coming months as we actually engineer this sustained and sustainable land imaging system for the next few decades.
Thank you, Mike. And we better close now because we will be all moving over to the auditorium just down the hall for the rest of the events of the day and the official signing to get those keys. I haven't seen the keys, actually. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thank